right. Hello, everyone. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. And if it's not your first time, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking with our two special guests from our own alma mater, Arrupe College. So we have LeVar Pope. Dr. LeVar Pope is a clinical associate professor of political science at Arrupe College, Loyola University, Chicago, and also the first faculty advisor for the Student Union. And then we also are welcomed with a Rupe class alum of 2020, my first Black Student Union President, Egypt Watson. Egypt, LeVar, welcome to the podcast. How are you
Hi.
both doing?
Thank you.
Welcome. So on this very sunny Monday in Chicago, today we're going to be discussing about belonging and how it impacts Black students on college campuses, and also the importance of culture, of belonging, and community. So before we kind of dive into that and how BSU kind of contributes to Arrupe College with cultivating sense of belonging, let's just talk basics. So, what is belonging to you? What does it mean to you? Belonging is such a human, natural thing that we do as humans and that we need. It's a necessary thing. What is kind of belonging to you and what it means?
Well, for me, belonging is like feeling accepted and appreciated in whatever space you're in, specifically in your educational space, because those are the people who cultivate like your career and your perspective on life as you continue to grow. Um, so for me, belonging is someone or a group of people accepting you for you and making you feel appreciated for being you.
Okay.
Awesome.
I mean, I would say that, it's what she said, plus like it's being comfortable, right? Like that you're comfortable in a community, and there's layers to that comfort. Like one layer would have to be safety. First and foremost, that you feel safe, physically safe, emotionally safe, safe that you're not going to get attacked in that community. And then from there, you can build into that you feel comfortable saying things in that community, that, and interacting with that community. And then another layer to where it's an affinity group where it's mostly people within your community, like, who, you're around. So, I mean, that's what I would say is that just feeling comfortable and just those different kind of layers of comfort, you know?
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, Egypt, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about your perspective. When you look back to your time as a student, specifically at Arrupe, what was it important to you to have these specific affinity spaces on college campuses? And what space made you feel like you belonged? What was one of those places where you would go to and say, okay, this is my safe space, if you have one that you can think of?
I usually connect well with the Black faculty and staff, so I would spend a lot of time with Dr. Pope, Dr. Gore, Dr. Armstrong. That was my little safe space. Um, in addition, like Dean Eric before Dean Keys, and that was Dean Keys, and then of course Dean Sarah. So like individual people like made me feel like the most comfortable until I found it BSU.
Which is what we all want to hear about. I think having those affinity spaces and finding those things wherever you are super important. And I'm glad you found that in different faculty. And what kind of just take us back to the time when you were like, okay, I think it's time to branch out and have like more community and affinity spaces for more students on campus. Kind of just walk us through like the origin story for Black Student Union and like what kind of inspired you to make that effort.
Okay, so the name of BSU was sparked after I participated in Bridging the Divide. Bridging the Divide gave me a different outlook on the need for like spaces for people, especially Black people, to feel comfortable. So I harassed Dr. Pope until he agreed to be my advisor,
That's why I'm
and
laughing.
then I
That's why I'm
stayed
laughing.
up. So then I stayed up until the last night of Bridging the Divide. I left a bit frustrated, and then the next day I stayed up to 6 a.m. Constitution Outlaws for BSU. I proposed it the next morning to Dr. Pope, and then that evening to Father K. So the
And I
origination
never.
of BSU, the origination of BSU pretty much started out of me realizing that there was a need in our predominantly white institution for Black people to feel safe, to feel heard, and to be seen.
So
I've never heard this whole story before. Like the story about the 6 a.m. Constitution and all that
Yeah, I
stuff.
stayed up to
She
6 a.m.
that is
I
so
was
that's
adamant.
dedication. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yes, very.
But I will tell you this, that she approached me on a train ride on BTD, right? Like so we were on Bridging the Divide, and we were traveling, I think, from Springfield to Chicago, I think, if I'm correct. And she approached me with this idea, and I was not like super. She'll tell I was not super into it. I offered other groups on campus, and I thought that I didn't think it was I thought that there was other groups that could, and she was very persistent in kind of presenting this idea. And ultimately, I said, I still don't think it's going to fly because you have to convince, Father K and like the administration at Arrupe to have this organization, because mostly because it's a duplicate organization. I mean, Carlos, Asia, you all know that you can't. There's certain rules about Arrupe participation organization at LUC, right? And when she approached me with this idea, I was like, I just had a seminar where they said you can't have a duplicate organization. If there's a Black student union at Loyola, you can't have a Black student union at Arrupe. You go join the one up there. And she just kept persistent argument. And she said, I wrote the Constitution, which she wrote the whole Constitution, and it's great. It's a great document, and it's 5 years, it's 5 years strong now. So she's trying to make it like the U.S. Constitution, where it's lasted for a real long time. Like so, and different folks have come in, like different people with different visions have come in and out of the organization with that Constitution. So I had never heard that story before. I'm sorry, but I do know that at the end of the story, she pitched the idea to Father K, who ultimately decided that this was a good idea. And I mean, it's one of the longer lasting student organizations right now. And yeah, so
Yeah,
sorry.
that's remarkable though to hear that, because I think um having from like my first year at Arrupe, like all these organizations are trying to be formed so we can have some type of like student community organizations that felt comfortable for us, because the difficult was like, oh, can we make organizations that wasn't so tied with Loyola, that it still didn't make sense for us to still go to these places where we felt more comfortable at Arrupe. So I I think it's like honorable that you guys made those steps, and you had that persistence, Egypt, and dedication to like, I need to see this change, and like I want this affinity services for more students. That's just me. So I'm glad you had the rapport too with our Pope to feel like you can go to him and like get get backing for that. So
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, to be clear, Loyola has the Black Culture Center. We are the first
Mm.
BSU of a Loyola entity, by the way.
wow,
That's
wonderful.
amazing. That is actually very cool. I didn't know about that policy that affects duplicate organizations. And that's actually very cool that even though now that you clarified Egypt, the BSU at Arrupe, it's unique. Either way, if there would have been a duplicate at Loyola, we all know, I mean, all of us have history with Arrupe, and we know that Arrupe is its own little world in some way, that there has to be it's like there's some sort of need to you know, have that safe space for people. And it's amazing that you both took that challenge of like, okay, it doesn't matter the obstacles that we have to face, we're gonna go for it. And I actually do have a question for the both of you as the pioneers of the unique Arrupe Black Student Union. What were some of the personal goals that you both had when creating this organization? What were some of those things that you wanted to accomplish? And we can start with you, Dr. Pope, if you'd like to.
I wanted Egypt to stop telling me information and stop making her case about like this organization. I mean, her case was so strong about it, right? And she kept telling me how important it was, right? And I guess the one thing that really, really is independent of like Egypt's argument, and that it was multifaceted. There's like 5 parts to this argument, right? Um, I think the one part that really, really, I'm wearing a BMS shirt and I support and want to be a part of, the Black Men for Success at Arrupe College. But she didn't say this in these words, but there was really nothing for her in the same kind of way, like a union where she could talk, where if, something happened to her at Loyola when she was entering the building, that like, that she could say something to around people and and something could be done about it, that there was some power there, right? And so it's because Black Men for Success is really for men, and even the other organizations that were around at the time, and I celebrate them. Brotherhood, Dean Eric, we mentioned Dean Eric before at his organization called Brotherhood, where Black and mostly Latino men would come around and talk about day-to-day stuff, sometimes mundane things. What is Dean Eric said, hey, what does Christmas look like at your house? Those type of things that we did in that space. And their sisterhood as well, which kind of replicates that space of brotherhood. But it wasn't a strong affinity group for our Black women at Arrupe College, and nor was the Black Cultural Center, right? They weren't that strong of groups where there were so many differences, and I think that Black Student Union has really taken on a lot. It's really taken on a lot, but and it works with those other organizations. We've had to learn how to work with those other organizations as well. But the impetus really was, Egypt's argument that she got the case approved through Father K, which I would say is kind of like, I was like, if you get Father K to agree with this, then I'll agree to this, and he did, and I think he's better for it. I mean, I think he thought, that afterwards, this is a really good idea. She made a strong case, just like with me, that this is and we're glad that a student can point this out. She there was Bridging the Divide was a tough program, just in terms of the schedule, the interactions with people, and she was thinking politically in some ways, thinking maybe some of the experiences that she was having, and maybe how some of those experiences related to her experience at Loyola. I don't know. I mean, that's just me thinking, but Egypt, you could speak more about that. That's maybe some of the reasons why. I don't know, but
I think we can agree. In addition to what Dr. Pope said, I just wanted a place where students could advocate for themselves and have support. A place where they can vocalize their opinion, vocalize their concerns, and like have somebody to support them and advocate for them to faculty and staff, or maybe to Father K or higher. I just wanted more so. I wanted it to be inclusive and free of judgment, and then an educational space too. I wanted you to learn from this collaborative like group. I want you to learn how to communicate with other groups and like plan events and whatnot. I primarily want to emphasize Black excellence in Arrupe College.
Absolutely. Do you feel like through the years you were there, like you accomplished some of those things?
I do. I am. First, I look at what they're doing now, and I'm very proud of them and like how far it's come. Second, to see like just an idea that came out of my head to flourish so well makes me very proud. I think we're doing a good job. I think Arrupe is doing a good job. And I'm appreciative of how long-standing BSU and its impact has been throughout Arrupe College.
yeah.
Yeah, and with that, was there any challenges? You said like there was kind of like some, people that you had to get it approved from, to, see it in fruition and actually people can, be a part of the organizations. But was there any other challenges while you were kind of like getting BSC off the ground?
I made a very strong case. And I think that when after Dr. Pope finally like saw it and like Father K saw like the purpose and the impact that it could have, I think it went full speed ahead after that. The convincing part probably only took a school week, and by the next week we was up and running, and I just needed students to join me, and I didn't have no problem, no challenges getting students to see the vision as well and see the need for it, so they joined.
Awesome. I love that. Was there any way, like, was it solely for Arrupe students? Like, were there any other interactions with organizations?
BSU, no, BSU was open to Loyola and Arrupe College students. I wanted it to be inclusive for all.
And did you see any Loyola students through that space? Any all?
A few of our events. We called it the Cookout, where we invited students from both campuses. Well, all three campuses really. If you were Black, if you want to see what we were doing, if you want to join, if you want to be a participant, volunteer, the Cookout was open and available for all to join us. We advertised on all campuses, and we had a good turnout.
Actually, very cool to hear that you opened it up, knowing that there was a need at Arrupe, but you were still considering the need at the at large university because again, Arrupe, we're still Loyola students, we're still Ramblers no matter what. So that is super cool to hear. Wanted to ask again the both of you, since you're the the OG from the VSU, like what are some of those highlights of the work that you got to do during your time leading the VSU? What is like maybe one or two things that you say, okay, this is like.
Okay. One thing I would say is that Egypt, she remembers this and she remembers it fondly, but the recruiting aspect was a little bit hard, right? And there was some aspect of getting lists of people, getting emails. That I remember getting that kind of ironed down. But I remember the help from LUC eventually, like the kind of she had this idea, we started this kind of program, and then LUC could kick in with the resources. So I mean, I think that was an initial highlight in seeing that those resources were actually there and funding as well, right? I mean, the BSU doesn't really want for much in terms of either there's some funding that the Black Men for Success can help with, or other organizations and things like that can help with in terms of events that are planned together and things like that, right? So there's some cross collaboration, and I mean that's a highlight as well for me. But there was an event like a soul food. I don't know if it's the cookout to which Egypt was referring, but a soul food cookout that we actually went to before we went to our Bridging the Divide event, which is a different program, but the thing about it was all of the participants of Bridging the Divide were part of the Soul Food Cookout, as well as Arrupe students who were kind of around that area. Other ones who had gotten there. I think there were some parents or there were some others there. Other folks in our community, extended people from our community as well, professors, other folks, and some people liked the food, some people didn't, but I got down. I mean, it was delicious. And afterwards, that was actually our dinner for Bridging the Divide. So we could kind of talk about that. Oh, this was good, and then Egypt was, she had her take, but it got done. It got done. I'll just leave it there. So, but it was a delicious and great event, and I think really the first of its kind at Arrupe College, where people just kind of barbecue style just kicked it and had food and kind of I would say picnic style, but like it was very informal in some ways, but yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like it was like the whole community kind of rallied behind this event, and like the organization, and like kind of helping each other out, and that kind of speaks to what you were talking about Egypt earlier, how to like talk to other organizations and collaborate. It seemed like a really collaborative event and very successful. It seemed to bring everybody together, and that's an important piece when you have organizations like this. So to speak on that, I think we've learned that being in Loyola, going to Loyola, and being in the predominantly white institutions, and for Black students or students of color to have a sense of belonging is essential, integral to someone's experience during their time at a university. So why is it so important to have a sense of belonging for students of color, and how does it impact the greater university?
Well, I think it's important to have a space of belonging and representation, because that allows students to be themselves, and then it also invites more students to learn to advocate and communicate with each other. I think having a collaborative space where everybody's ideas are accepted and flushed through, that allows the university as a whole to advance and to enhance and for the most part, the university as a whole, we grow together, because not only are we learning to listen to students that are underrepresented, we are also giving students that are underrepresented a platform to continue advocating for themselves and continue letting their voice be heard.
Absolutely. Dr. Arrupe, any thoughts?
I mean, I think it's the same. It's the same thing. I mean, it's I think that my message is consistent, that the sense of belonging has to kind of be built first within kind of the micro unit of Rupe College before it could then be built. And there's some comfort at LUC. And we had a speaker, come to believe, had a speaker whose research was based off of this, right? That there had to be that insular community in some ways before there was some comfort outside of that. And I think Egypt's case, the fact that it was organic in the sense that she thought of it and that she saw that there was a problem or issue and she responded to it, is a form of political action in itself. While she was studying this stuff and on a field trip about it. So if you want to talk about active learning, you want to talk about, someone who has the potential to change things in a outside the university setting, and someone who does this type of thing, at the university level. But the sense of belonging and inclusion, it's not just that she created this program, it's long standing, that it's been through 4 different leadership groups with Egypt and an original leadership group. We had Najee, who was the second kind of leadership group, and he brought in more of this during COVID, and it lasted during COVID too. So he was doing kind of the online meetings and more trying to get people to rally. In some ways, kept the organization afloat during this process. And then um, Damien and Malia, right, that did more. They kind of brought us back from COVID, kind of a mixed. Their job was difficult too, because it was like a mixed kind of like bag of, like, some of it was online, some of it was in person, but did a lot of stuff in terms of keeping the organization strong. And now we have Khalil. We have a current student right now who's president, and he just submitted kind of the e-board, and we're getting kind of a strong e-board, and then we're gonna have an e-board plus, because there's so many students who are interested in this, that um, you know there's an e-board plus other students who want to be part of the executive committee, but who aren't part of the e-board. So there's a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. And other people are like, hey, I want to help set the agenda. I want to talk about these things. I want to come to those meetings in addition to the Black student meeting, the Black student union meetings, right? And a challenge, to be frank, that we're facing. And Egypt, she knows about this as well. Not her personally, but she knows about this. Is kind of GPA requirements, and kind of the academic side, because the academics always have to come first, and they have to always come first at Arrupe. But with some of the demands on the Arrupe student, with being year round, kind of longer classes, then it, it doesn't leave some time. It sometimes doesn't leave time for some of these Black Student Union events or for faculty to kind of fully engage them. And so that has always been a huge, huge challenge. Um, when to plan these events, because you have two cohorts. You have a cohort in the morning and a cohort in the afternoon. So do you plan it over the 1 to 2 o'clock period? Do you plan it in the evening, and then none of the morning people can be there? I mean, Carlos and Asia, you know full well about kind of the morning and afternoon kind of cohort and some of the unique challenges that brings. But that's part of, again, I want to point to the resources that were afforded to us from Arrupe College and from Loyola, and say that we've overcome like many of those challenges, but some of them continue to persist.
Yeah, those are the things that we dealt with when we were like in our own organizations and stuff like that. I think that's just it's always going to just be a continual challenge because it's just the way the nature of like the program, and then also the student programs that are also important to student life. So like balancing those things out, how they can like be harmonized and complement each other. I think that's always going to be difficult, but I think like it's good that the foundation was so strong that it continues to see like growth and like continued motivation or like energized energy, energy for this program and like what it's doing and how it's allowing people to have voice and feel have the agency to be independent and do more organizations or do other groups that they feel inspired to do. And like I think Egypt, you had a very powerful example that you kind of left behind for everybody to have their own path that they wanted to follow, because you kind of were the president for that. So I hope you feel good about that. I guess what do you feel like if a person who's like, we have new organizations that are or new colleges are going to be hopefully going to be built around the country, that's going to be kind of like a Rupe, and if there's going to be student organizations that are rebuilt there at those colleges. So like what are, I guess, some of the advice would you give them to kind of build that sense of belonging for other students of color on those campuses?
For me, I would tell them some advice for me is don't take no for an answer. No is just a form of redirection. So give yourself some time to revise and go at it again. Usually, some people don't see the vision initially, but if you keep being persistent, follow your dreams, it'll come true.
Thank you. And then Dr. Pope, is there any advice about like building a sense of belonging in your classroom, like as a professor? How do you kind of create that in your space?
Yeah, I think it's about for first and foremost respect, right? That having respect for a human rights and respect, right? Like, so we're talking about issues and we're talking about the stuff that we're respecting someone's identity, no matter whether that's in terms of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, like whatever that person expresses their identity, that we're being respectful of that and when we're having conversations, right? And that not just that me and the rest of the most of the rest of the class is being respectful of that, but there's just not one knucklehead in the back of the class that is attacking those anyone's identity, right? But the balance, though, Asia, is that you also have to be available to not attack political ideas, but examine them, right? So you have to be able to separate, hey, this is someone's identity. This is something that someone has expressed as this is, and that's never okay for attack. But the other side is, hey, these are ideas that are about how the government should operate, how I should vote. Those need to be discussed. We got to discuss those things. So, um, finding ways to create respectful dialogue, which is not new to me or political science, or this is something that people have been doing for years and years and years. And I think that at its core, we keep referring to this program, the Bridging the Divide program, but at its core, that program to which the program in which Egypt was engaged in, it was really to increase this respectful dialogue. And I think that um, the more that we do that, the more that we can solve some of these political problems. But on the other end, and what we're doing is an affinity group. This is just a affinity group. So you asked me a question about class, Asia, and one of the reasons that you need these affinity groups is that classes there's so many different diverse interests there. There's so many, like the classes at Arrupe College perhaps even more diverse than when you all were attending Arrupe College in terms of age, in terms of just another, housing. Some students live on live on campus now. It's just different now, in some of those respects. But I think the spirit is the same, and it's built off of we have to be open to these different layers of diversity in different ways for them to come to us and be welcome and want to learn. Some people don't want to learn from people if you're being mean to them or being racist towards them, right? Like I wouldn't want to learn towards a teacher who exhibited those kind of qualities and characteristics, right? It'd be very hard, whether it's math, science, whatever the case may be. And that culture of respect is first and foremost. And that goes back to what I said before about feeling safe in a space, physically safe, emotionally safe, because you're not going to be able to learn. Just like the data that says you're not going to be able to learn if you're hungry, right? When you sit down, you're not going to be. Which are, by the way, Arrupe also, has food for people who are hungry, right? So I think the resources there just made it a great place and a great fit for the BSU.
I just wanted to say that listening to the both of you has been such a like a reaffirming experience for me. Like when it comes to my own experience at Arrupe, obviously what you both did was a lot of work to make this happen, to make BSU happen, and to see how far it has come from now, to hear how far it has come from now, from I don't know when was this, 2019, 2020. Um, that takes a lot and super cool to hear, and it just makes me hopeful when it comes to the work that CTB is doing, trying to expand Arrupe and the CTB model into other places for other students across the United States. So it's just exciting to me, and I'm really happy to be able to chat with y'all and to continue learning from your experiences and the things that you've been doing and the things that you continue to do for other people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hopefully, someone else at another university doesn't have to, go through too many layers to say that they need a Black Student Union. But I don't know if Egypt would agree with me on this, but I also think that they should have to go through a few layers and have a constitution and have, some of the things that Egypt had, that they had ready, so to know that they're serious about it. So, just an excellent program. Actually, and this is the reason why we teach. This is what makes it very much worthwhile when a student comes to you with an idea like this. So,
And if you allow me to ask one more question, now that we're mentioning the possibility of another CTB like school, right? Another Arrupe like school. What would you tell these leaders, these people that are working to make that happen, to ensure that belonging is at the center?
there's a few core organizations at Arrupe, like maybe 5 or so, that like I think any school from startup needs to almost have, like, not that they're already created, but there's the layers for that already created, right? So if, the Black Student Union being one of them, Black Men for Success, which isn't a student organization, but I think those are very important to have. DASO, depending on which community, but most communities that we're serving with the Come to Believe network needs to have some form where there's affinity group for students who are experiencing that struggle. The obviously the student orgs, the leadership orgs, the student council, kind of
Student government.
student government. Thank you. I'm sorry. The student government, absolutely essential, right? And I'm not trying to pick and choose ones, but I'm telling you what I see as like the really long lasting ones where students are involved, where they're active about those kind of need to be assumed that they're created, maybe not year one, but
Hmm.
shortly thereafter. And I have to echo this like as much as I can, especially now. There has to be time for students to engage in these organizations. They have to have some kind of time or some kind of um, schedule where this can be part of what they're doing. Because I've seen cases where organizations like this, similar to the BSU, are the reason why students get up and come to class and are part of Loyola. Um, and I think that's important. I think that's a good thing. Um, that's what I would say.
To diversify the student population, make sure that you are giving more Black students, more people of color, an opportunity to take advantage of a free education. I think it's important to advertise in predominantly Black communities and advertise in predominantly like Hispanic communities, only because it's important that we Black people have the opportunity to be educated without the burden of financial responsibilities.
Amazing. Thank you. And I completely agree. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Well, this has been an exciting conversation. Thank you, Egypt and LeVar, for being a part of this discussion on belonging for Black students on campus. It's very important that we continue to do this work, and we're so thankful for the legacy y'all left behind to continue to grow and thrive in the coming years. This has been Culturally the Podcast. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this.
Thank you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.